title, he stole my promotion, so I stole his position. Narrated by the woman he underestimated. My name is Alina Cho. I'm 34 years old, and 6 months ago, I was applauding in a crowded office cafeteria as they handed my promotion to someone else. Don't note, someone else. They gave it to David. David, who used to send me his broken Excel files at midnight. David, who once called me the backbone of this team when I fixed his quarterly report overnight. David, who stood on that tiny stage, clutching a bouquet, grinning like he wrote the code himself. He didn't. I did, and they all knew it. The partners, the VP, even Martin in HR, who once whispered, "You're next," over lukewarm cupcakes after our annual review. I had led the last 3 product launches. I'd saved $1 million in losses by catching an API bug that David introduced. But when the time came for VP of Product, they gave it to him because he was a more natural leader, because he had presence, because clients remembered his name. Right, they didn't even look me in the eye when they announced it. After the clapping died down, David came up to me, still holding his stupid flowers. He patted my shoulder like a dog. "I couldn't have done it without you, Alina." Then, as if to hammer the insult in, "You're really great at the support stuff." I nodded, smiled, and I started planning. People think revenge is some loud explosion yelling in meetings, flipping tables, slashing tires in a fit of rage. It's not. Revenge is quiet. It's a series of perfectly timed emails. It's remembering who signs what. It's noticing who drinks too much at company offsites and who's cheating their expense reports. It's watching while they overlook you, then letting the silence bury them later. Over the next 3 months, I became invisible. On purpose, I said less in meetings. Made David look smarter, cleaned up his mistakes. Before anyone saw them, he thought he was flying. He wasn't. He was walking straight into a glass wall. Let me tell you something about David. He was always confident in public, but he couldn't lead a team to save his life. Deadlines slipped. 1 engineer quit. 2 others requested a transfer. Slack turned into chaos under his leadership, and me. I just kept smiling. I stayed late. Said nothing until the board asked me privately to help stabilize the team without making David feel undermined. And that's when I knew he was already finished. While he stumbled through all-hands updates and corporate jargon, I started talking to people above his head. Quiet conversations, the kind you don't log in Slack. I built relationships with ops, finance, compliance. I offered help, made introductions, connected dots. Real leadership. And when David missed a critical deadline that cost us a 6-figure renewal, I didn't throw him under the bus. I just made sure the board found out before he could spin it, and I attached the email trail complete, time-stamped and crystal clear. On a rainy Thursday in Q2, David was called into a meeting with the partners. He didn't come out for 2 hours. When he did, his tie was undone, his laptop was gone, his promotion revoked. But that wasn't the win. That was just step 1. Because here's the twist. I didn't want his title. I wanted something bigger. While he was enjoying the perks of VP, I'd been doing a little investing. Remember those compliance contacts I mentioned? They let me know when the company was preparing for a merger. And more importantly, when early-stage shares were undervalued. I bought in quietly, strategically, and when the valuation doubled, I became the 4th largest individual shareholder. Enough to be noticed, enough to get a seat at the table. And in the full board reshuffle, I nominated myself for the one open executive spot, Chief Strategy Officer, a level above VP at the vote. David was there sitting in the back, no title, no power. He didn't make eye contact. I didn't look away. This isn't a story about revenge. This is a story about recognition. I didn't need to scream to be seen. I just needed to be strategic, enough to make ignoring me the most expensive mistake they'd ever make. Title: He Stole My Promotion, So I Stole His Position, narrated by Alina Cho. They say power corrupts, but that's not quite right. Power doesn't corrupt. It reveals. And when the board gave me the CSO badge, a new office, and a black company card with my name embossed in silver, I didn't get corrupted. I got precise. The first thing I did, I declined the assistant. They offered me one, of course. Someone fresh-faced and eager with a clipboard. But I didn't want an assistant. I wanted proximity. I wanted to know who dropped the ball, who covered it up, and who clapped while they handed my promotion to someone who couldn't lead a birthday party. I kept my schedule light on purpose. Spent time in the hallway, revisited my old engineers. Took the interns out for coffee, and I listened, not with suspicion, but with intention. Because when you're underestimated for long enough, you learn something the over-promoted never do. Power doesn't come from titles. It comes from what people tell you when they trust you. 1 week in, I received my first anonymous email. The subject line: "You're not like the rest of them." No greeting. No signature. Just a forwarded internal thread between David and the vendor we'd lost before the merger. In it, David had admitted on record to backdating numbers in our CRM, not because of oversight, because of optics. To make Q1 look stronger. That missed deadline, it wasn't missed, it was falsified, and the worst part, it had affected our merger price, which meant securities fraud. I sat with that email for a long time. Most people would forward it to legal. Most would use it as ammunition, fire it off like a final torpedo and bask in the flames. But I didn't, because David wasn't the only one who had seen those numbers before the merger. There were board members copied, finance people still sitting at the same table where I now brought my own chair. So instead of outing him, I wrote a memo, internal, strategic, worded just right, subject: risk, exposure, audit, recommendations, 3 pages, no accusations, no names, just data inconsistencies, the suggestion of review, and a detailed list of audit triggers. I CC'd the CFO, and waited. 2 days later, David was officially blacklisted. The company issued a quiet internal bulletin. He wouldn't be a consultant, wouldn't even be welcomed at the holiday party. He was scrubbed from the website. I heard he was trying to start a consultancy out of his apartment, offering leadership workshops. Let that sink in. The second thing I did, I changed the bonus policy. The old system, opaque, favor-based, built around people like David, who smiled up and punched down. My version, transparent, earned, documented. The engineers who stayed late got equity bumps. The interns who fixed back-end flaws were offered extensions. And the junior PM who'd once hidden in the corner of meetings, I gave her my old team and a shot. People noticed, and for the first time in years, the product team was quiet. Not because they were scared, because they were working for someone who finally saw them. There was one moment I'll never forget. Quarterly board dinner. Big steakhouse, long mahogany table, wine flowing like we'd invented it ourselves. Dan, founding partner who once told me I was a little too technical to lead, raised a glass to me. To Alina, he said, the sharpest pivot we never saw coming. Everyone laughed, I smiled, but inside, I remembered sitting across from that same man 2 years ago, after my first roadmap pitch, how he patted my slide deck and said, "You're a fantastic executor, vision. That'll come with age." That night, after the dinner, I walked back to my apartment. It was late. My heels were killing me. But I didn't care. Maple, my dog, not my metaphorical moral compass, was waiting at the door. She wagged like I'd just come home from war. In a way, I had. I poured a glass of wine, sat down, opened my laptop, and pulled up David's LinkedIn, still active, still public, still describing himself as a dynamic, people-first leader. I didn't block him, didn't send him a message. Instead, I hit connect. No note, just a quiet reminder that I was still here, still rising, and that the view from above, the role he stole, was spectacular. Because this story, it's not just mine. It's for every woman who fixed the spreadsheet and got told she wasn't strategic enough. For every person who stayed late while someone else gave the presentation. For every employee called support when they were the center. They say revenge is best served cold. But honestly, I prefer it structured, vested, and publicly filed with quarterly returns. Title: He Stole My Promotion, So I Stole His Position, narrated by Alina Chosix. Weeks into the new role, I did something most executives avoid, like the flu. I sat in the open workspace. No office, no corner view, just a desk, a laptop, and the constant hum of 20-somethings in hoodies, chasing sprint deadlines and snack drawer dreams. People stared, they whispered, but slowly, they started talking to me not as a boss, but as someone who got it. I wasn't there to spy. I was there to remember who we were before the titles, before the perks, before the illusion of power made people forget that the real work happens in bad chairs, in bad lighting, with really good people. One afternoon, I noticed a sticky note on my desk. It wasn't from my team. It wasn't from HR. It wasn't even signed. It just said, "Thank you for staying human." 7 words. Black ink, block letters. And I swear to you, it meant more than the entire congratulatory bouquet I got from the board. But not everything was poetic. Power, even earned power, breeds tension. And not everyone was happy about my rise. There was Lars from Finance who once told me I over-explained things like an academic. Now he was scheduling back-to-back meetings with me, trying to assert budget authority and question every decision with a smirk hidden behind spreadsheets that there was page. In marketing, an ex-colleague of David's Hood once said I was hard to warm up to. Now she was circling back on every cross-functional initiative I proposed, like stall tactics could unwind progress. And then there were whispers always, the whispers, that I'd played dirty, that I'd gamed the system, that I waited for David to fall. They were half right. I didn't wait. I built. Let me tell you something about strategy. Real strategy doesn't show up in all-caps presentations or polished pitches. It shows up in patterns, in noticing the engineer who never speaks but always commits the cleanest code, in realizing which vendors overcharge based on whose name is on the invoice, in mapping power not on the org chart, but in who people actually trust when things go sideways. I had spent years learning those patterns, quietly, meticulously, and now I was using them to build a company that deserved better than PowerPoint leaders and handshake promotions. And then something happened that no one expected, not even me. An investor call. Mid-quarter. Unscheduled, urgent. I was looped in last minute. Turns out, one of our biggest institutional investors was re-evaluating their position in the company. Too much volatility. Too many internal shake. They didn't like instability, their word, not mine, so I joined the call. 7 men, 2 women, all in suits I could hear through the speaker. They asked me to explain the company's future in 1 sentence. I paused, and then said, "We're not rebuilding. We're remembering who we were before we got lazy with power." Silence. Then, someone laughed. Not mocking, genuine. Another one said, "That's the most honest thing I've heard all quarter." The next day, they doubled their investment. Not because of projections, not because of decks. Because they heard someone in leadership speak like a human, not a headline. I told the board in our next meeting. Dan looked stunned, like he'd just realized he was no longer the only one who could close a room with a sentence. And, just like that, the tide shifted. People stopped whispering. They started watching. And some started following. Not out of fear, but out of faith. Then came the email from David. The subject line, "Congratulations." No body, no signature, just that one word. I stared at it for a while, then deleted it. No response, no curiosity, no drama. Because closure isn't something you get, it's something you decide. That Friday, I walked out of the building at 6 p.m. for the first time in 3 years. No laptop. No anxiety in my chest. Just the sunset and the smell of roasted peanuts from the cart outside. I called my mum on the way home. She still didn't fully understand what I did for work. But she said, "You sound happier." And she was right. I was. Not because I got revenge, but because I got clarity. I finally understood that being overlooked had taught me to see, and being underestimated had made me undeniable. Title: He Stole My Promotion, So I Stole His Position. Narrated by Alina Chotha. Thing about rising is, people start rewriting your story. Suddenly I wasn't the woman who got passed over. I was the visionary leader. The turnaround, executive, the one to watch. They said I came out of nowhere. That's the part that always made me laugh. Nowhere. I was right there, in the meeting room with the broken AC, typing the notes, fixing the slides, training the interns, who got credit I never asked for. I didn't come out of nowhere. They just never looked down. And now, they were looking up. But being at the top comes with a new weight. It's not the same as being under pressure. This is a different kind of tension. The quiet fear that maybe now, people are clapping for you. The same way they clapped for David. Not out of respect, but out of habit. So, I tested it. I proposed a controversial change. Kill performance reviews. Every last one. No more checkbox evaluations. No more exceeds expectations that meant nothing. Instead, I introduced impact cycles, 6 weeks, 3 goals, 1 mentor, all tracked by action, not talk. People panicked. Middle managers, especially, it took away their favorite weapon, vagueness. But the team, they thrived. Engineers solved issues faster. Product and design began communicating without calendar ping-pong. Customer service reported a 32% drop in escalator titlelands. Why? Because no one was afraid anymore. They didn't have to perform. They just had to build. Meanwhile, the board started asking me about succession planning. Code 4. What happens if you leave? It was flattering, but also ironic, because, when I was quietly holding up David's title, no one asked what would happen if I left. Now that I had a title, suddenly they wanted a contingency plan. I gave them one. I nominated Leela, senior PM, first-gen college grad, never loud in meetings, always delivered quietly, perfectly. The board balked. She's not polished, I said, neither was I. That shut them up. Later that night, Leela messaged me. Did you mean it? I wrote back, I don't say things I don't mean. You're not next. You're now. She didn't reply right away, but I saw her in the office the next morning, standing a little straighter. That was worth more than any stock option. But not everything was redemption. Arcs and quiet victories. One of the former execs, let's call him Tom, decided to start a whisper campaign. Said I politicized the culture. Said I played favorites. Said I weaponized compassion. I invited him to lunch, not to fight. To listen, let him say every word. Then, before the check came, I slid a folder across the table. Inside, every budget deviation he'd authorized in Q3 last year. And a side note from compliance. Possible breach of fiduciary duty if not documented. I smiled. Tom, if I wanted revenge, I'd let the numbers speak. But I don't want revenge. I want alignment. So either back the mission, or back away. He backed away. By now, the whispers had turned into silence. Not fear, respect. And that's a more dangerous kind of power. Because, once people respect you, they stop questioning your moves. That's how people like David survive for years. They trade on surface-level charm, while the rest of us clean up the mess, but I wouldn't let that happen under my watch. I created a channel called #unfiltered. Any employee, any level, could post anonymous feedback. No fluff, no retribution. Just truth. The first week, someone said, it's weird that our CEO follows only other execs on LinkedIn. Feels elitist. The next day, I followed every junior staff member I could find. The week after, why are we still using outdated payroll software from 2015? We switched providers in under a month. One post simply said, for the first time in my career, I feel like the company sees me. I don't want to go back to hiding. Neither did I. Don't you know what I've learned? Power isn't about control, it's about proof. Proof that you can protect your people, not just promote yourself. Proof that when given the chance, the right person will rewrite the playbook, not because they want credit, but because the old one was built for the wrong game. That weekend, I took Maple to the park. She still chases the same red tennis ball she's had since she was a puppy. Worn, dirty, reliable, kind of like me, I guess. I sat on a bench, watching her run in circles, and thought, this is the real win, not the title, not the office, not even the revenge. The win is freedom. The freedom to choose what kind of leader you want to be. After spending a lifetime learning what kind of leader you'll never become. Title, he stole my promotion, so I stole his position. Narrated by Alina Cho. There's something strange about achieving the thing you once dreamed about while crying quietly in your car in an underground parking lot. It doesn't feel like you thought it would. There's no confetti, no standing ovation, no slow-motion scene with dramatic music in the background. What there is space. Space to think, space to lead, space to finally ask, what do I do with all this power they once denied me? And my answer, you use it to break the ladder. Not climb it, break it, so no one else has to bleed on the rungs just to be seen. I started doing office hours. Every Thursday, 4 to 6 p.m., no appointment, no filters, no title required. You want to talk about a toxic manager? Come in. You want to pitch a side idea? Come in. You want to vent about how HR ignored your last harassment report? Absolutely, come in. The first week, 2 interns showed up, nervous, shaky, holding notes. By week 3, I had to move it to the main conference room. By week 6, I had department heads sitting with me, listening. Not everyone liked it. Some execs said it was too grassroots. I smiled. Exactly, because leadership isn't about being above anyone, it's about showing everyone you're still part of something, that your title didn't replace your integrity. One day, while reorganizing my files, I found a copy of my old performance review there, one from the year they promoted David over me. It had this sentence in it: Alina is highly competent, but lacks executive-level charisma. I stared at it, then I printed it out, framed it, and hung it on the back wall of my office. Why? Because sometimes you need a reminder, not of where you failed, but of where they misjudged you, so deeply, so publicly, so completely, that the only response worth giving is becoming undeniable. A few months later, we held our annual leadership summit. It was bigger than usual. Investors, media, partners. I gave the keynote. Halfway through, I paused, took a breath, and then said, when you ignore the people doing the actual work, you don't just create turnover, you create revolution. And sometimes, that revolution looks like me. In this seat, telling this story, holding this mic, and never letting it go again. Double quotes, silence, then applause. Not polite, not corporate, real. Afterward, a woman in her 40s came up to me. She didn't say her name, just gripped my hand and said, I didn't know we were allowed to fight back. Until you did. But I didn't do this alone. It took every late night, every ignored email, every will circled back, every time someone else got credit for my idea. Those weren't failures, they were fuel now. When someone tries to promote a David, I ask the hard questions. Who actually did the work? Who kept this project alive when no one was watching? Who was in the background because they were too busy building the foundation? Because from now on, builders get the spotlight. Backbones get the bonuses. And the next Alina, she doesn't have to wait for permission. I don't want statues or speeches. I want systems, ones that remember what people like me had to endure, so the ones who come after us never have to again. One night, after a long day of budget reviews, I was packing up to leave. The office was quiet, everyone gone. Just the low hum of a vending machine and Maple snoring under my desk. On my whiteboard, someone had scribbled. She didn't raise her voice. She raised the bar. I never found out who wrote it, but I left it there. Because that's the legacy that matters. Title: He stole my promotion, so I stole his position. Narrated by Alina Chowi. Held a reunion, of sorts. 3 years after that day in the cafeteria, the day David got handed my promotion, I invited the entire team, old and new, to a rooftop event. No branding, no pitch decks, no hierarchy. Just music, city lights, open food trays, and people who remembered. David didn't come, but his absence spoke louder than any apology he could have written. I wasn't waiting for one. Anyway, some people still ask me if I forgave him. I always answer the same way. I didn't need to forgive him. I just stopped needing anything from him. Forgiveness is not always about grace. Sometimes it's about indifference. About reaching a point so high, you don't have to look down to measure the fall anymore. One of the interns from back then, Olivia, me at the event, she was now a product manager. Confident.com, brave. She said, you probably don't remember, but you once told me to keep receipts, that one day I'd need them. I laughed, I told everyone that. She nodded, then reached into her purse and handed me a folded piece of paper. It was a screenshot, an old email thread, my name at the top. David's comment below. She's just support. Don't CC her next time. She'd saved it. Olivia looked me in the eye and said, I just wanted to show you how far just support can rise. And for the first time in years, I felt my throat catch. Because I wasn't just fighting for a title back then. I was unknowingly clearing a path. It hit me then, maybe the biggest win isn't the office, or the salary, or even the justice. Maybe it's the shift. The quiet transfer of power from those who pretend to those who deliver. From those who climb by stepping on others to those who rise by lifting. Now, every decision I make is a promise to the girl I used to be. The one who stayed late fixing someone else's mess. The one who wore the same blazer 3 days in a row because she wasn't sure if showing too much personality would cost her. The one who learned how to outthink a system that wasn't built for her to win. She deserves a CEO who sees her, even if that CEO had to become her first. There's no plaque for this, no award for taking your power back without burning the building down. But every time someone walks through our doors, gets promoted for real contribution, or gets recognized without asking twice, that's the trophy. So yes, David stole my promotion, but I didn't just steal his title back, I stole the narrative. I stole the myth that charisma beats competence, that politics matter more than product, that women like me should wait their turn. And now I don't wait. I build, I elevate, I lead, and I do it so that the next person who's told they're just support knows better. So that was my story. Or maybe it was our story. Because I know somewhere out there someone listening to this knows exactly what it feels like to be overlooked. To be told you're not ready. To have the door shut right in your face while someone less capable walks through it with your name still on the plaque. But let this be a reminder. You are not invisible. You are not replaceable. And your time is not over. They said I didn't have executive charisma. They said I was too technical, too intense, too much. But I wasn't too much. I was too real for a world that was too shallow. And instead of shrinking to fit the mold, I outgrew it, then broke it. I rose without asking permission. I led without playing politics. And I rewrote the narrative, not with revenge, but with results. That's the real win. Because success isn't always about being louder. Sometimes it's about being undeniable. And if you've ever doubted your path, your pace, or your place in this world, I want you to remember this. You don't have to wait your turn. You can build your own table. And when they say you can't, you show them how quietly a storm can rise. To everyone who's been told they're just support, you are the backbone. You are the reason things don't fall apart. And one day, the world will see you, not as an assistant, not as a footnote, but as the author of your own legacy. Thank you truly for staying with me through this journey. Your time is valuable. Your attention is a gift. And if this story meant something to you, if it stirred something inside you, I hope you carry that feeling forward. Because this isn't the end, this is just the beginning. For all of us. So, to every listener, every believer, every quiet fighter who's ever been made to feel small, I see you, I believe in you, and I can't wait to hear your story next. Until then, keep building, keep rising, and never forget, you were never just support. You were always the reason things held together. Thank you for listening. And if this resonated with you, share it with someone who needs the reminder. Your story matters. Your voice matters. You matter always.